Hello there my beautiful rowers. Today we are gonna talk about one of my favorite characters in Wuthering Waves so far, Sanhua. She not only has the most heartwarming smile in the game, but she is also extremely powerful. I believe many players are still heavily underrating her, and since all of us have recently received her for free as part of the login event, I think it's worth exploring her potential a bit closer in this video. Besides discussing why she is so strong, I will tell you everything you need to know from how her kit functions, what her best builds and teams are, up to some additional tips to master her playstyle. I have gotten her already on day 1 during my Sinner Banner pulls and have played her excessively since then. So I'm gonna be able to teach you the ins and outs of her kit so you can make use of probably one of the strongest characters in this game. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, let us first talk about how her kit actually works. Fundamentally, there are two parts to it. The first thing to know is that basically all of her abilities are forming these ice structures to deal AoE damage when they are being created. This is the case for her intro skill, resonance skill, as well as her resonance liberation. The size and damage of the ice of course differs between the abilities. Now the second part comes from a forte circuit ability. With that, Sanhua can perform a special charge attack that will detonate all ice structures she has created, which will then result in heavy AoE damage. In order to be able to perform this move, you have to pay close attention to her forte circuit bar on the bottom. While holding down to perform a heavy attack, you can see an indicator going up and down, and letting go while inside the frostbite area, that's the blue highlighted part, lets her perform the special attack. The size of the frostbite area changes depending on how many stacks of clarity Sanhua has. A clarity stack is gained from either using any of her abilities or performing a full basic attack sequence. A little warning here, this will feel super clunky once you try it out for the first time, and many players will think this makes it difficult to play. However, I can assure you that you will get used to it fairly quickly. And trust me, once you get the hang of it, her gameplay feels extremely rewarding to play. Also very important to mention is that she can pull off her entire damage rotation extremely quickly, which is one of her main strengths. This already makes her a great contender to be played as a sub DPS. However, we haven't talked about her outro skill yet, which further strengthens her potential in that role. This ability is called Silver Snow and gives the next character to take the field 38% basic attack deepen for 14 seconds. This can be a really potent buff if you are able to pair with a basic attack focused main DPS like Encore or Havoc Rover for example. Since almost all characters currently use basic attacks somewhere in their rotation, this can also provide value for other team constellations where you are simply lacking a decent sub DPS character. This means in summary that not only does she provide heavy AoE damage, she is also extremely flexible when you are playing her in a sub DPS role. Now that we've discussed what she is able to do, we should talk about how we should build her to get the maximum out of her potential. In terms of weapons, the only 5-star sword currently in the game is of course her best option. However, she also has 2 great 4-stars with Commander of Conviction and Lunar Cutter. Both of them are great and synergize very well with a sub DPS playstyle. When it comes to the Echo set however, we have to make a tough decision. We can either focus on her supportive capabilities by equipping her with the Bell-born Geo thingy or the Impermanence Heron, which allows her to further buff other DPS characters. Or we instead choose to focus on her personal damage by using the Glacio set Freezing Frost. Considering overall team DPS as a metric, the first option is better, simply because of the fact that the only 4-star echo on the Glacio set costs us a lot of field time. If you are planning on playing her as the main DPS, or just like high ice nuke numbers, first of all, based, and second, well, choose the Glacio set of course. In terms of stats, you want for both sets the usual stuff, with crit, Glacio damage followed up by attack percentage. When it comes to energy recharge, you really don't need that much, you are most likely fine with whatever random rolls you have already gotten. 10 to 20% should be fine, and obviously you can add a bit more depending on what feels better to you. Next up, let's quickly cover her sequences. The first 2 are almost irrelevant unfortunately if you play her as a sub DPS. The first one sounds nice on paper with a 15% crit rate bonus after her basic attack sequence. But you are most likely not gonna profit from that, since incorporating this full attack sequence in her rotation just takes a lot away from her strength of having a short field time. Her S2 feels even weaker since it's just a small quality of life upgrade. It reduces the stamina cost of her charge attack and gives her some interruption resistance. Really nothing too impactful. Just a nice to have. The third one on the other hand is very strong. This increases the damage by 35% against enemies below 70% health. Pretty straightforward stuff, but this is our strongest sequence in terms of overall DPS. You can expect around 20% more damage from this. S4 gives her boosted energy recharge as well as her heavy attack damage. This essentially completely solves her energy recharge requirements, so you don't have to pay attention to that. A decent upgrade. With S5, things are starting to get more interesting, since this gives the damage of her ultimate an additional 100% crit damage. This is an extremely powerful node that also comes with a quality of life function by allowing the ice structures to detonate on their own if you fail to pull off your charge attack. Then finally, to top it all off, S6 provides the whole team with an up to 20% attack buff for 20 seconds, which boosts her supportive capabilities even further. Overall, we can say that Sanhua scales extremely well with additional wave bands after you get past the first two. Next up are team comps, and we pretty much covered that earlier already. Encore and wuwa's Havoc form can profit a lot from her buff, otherwise she fits into every team that simply needs a sub DPS. But her best synergy is likely with Ling Yang. So if you count yourself to the rare breed of Ling Yang mains out there, you should probably build her as soon as possible. One other fairly interesting team comp I want to mention, however, is with wuwa's Spectral form. Sanhua herself already can stop enemies for a short duration with a charge attack, but paired with wuwa and the slowdown mechanics, essentially freezes the enemy in place for most of the fight, which is pretty funny. At this point you can think about skipping a healer altogether in favor of another DPS character, like for example Encore. This might not be a top tier team, but it's actually really fun to play. Okay, so for the final part of this guide, I want to give you some additional tips when it comes to playing Sanhua. First, a small tip regarding her rotation and detonation ability. In the normal rotation you likely start with her intro skill, then the echo ability followed up by her burst into her skill, and finish it all up by detonating the ice structures with her charge attack. Pretty fast, pretty big numbers, pretty awesome stuff. But what if I told you there's an even faster way? The detonation trigger of a charge attack has a bit of a delay. This allows you to go into a charge attack right after your burst and then do a quick skill cast at the end of the animation. If you do this fast enough, the ice structures from your skill will still be affected by the detonation and explode instantly. This takes some finesse to pull off reliably, because you also have to be careful not to cancel a charge attack by pressing the skill too early, which can happen unfortunately. However, this can be a nice trick to further speed up your rotation. Next up, we also have to talk about her normal attacks. Oh boy. The fifth and final attack of her basic attack sequence is the most awful animation of all time. Not in the sense that it is hideous, it looks really badass, but it takes forever and locks you into the animation, essentially inviting the enemies to hit you. Always try to cancel this animation by all means necessary, or you're gonna regret it otherwise. You should however try to complete the sequence if you're already thinking about doing basic attacks, since as we talked about earlier, her first wave band gives her 15% crit, and one of her other talents buffs her next burst by 20% if you complete the sequence. And this is especially important if you play her as a main DPS, because it significantly increases her overall damage output. Just not something you would normally do if you play her in a sub DPS role, since it goes against her strength of having a short field time. Alright, but that should cover pretty much it. We of course could go deeper in specific animation cancelling stuff, but I might reserve this for another more in-depth video. For now, to summarize again, Sanhua is in my opinion a must-build character if you are looking for a powerful sub DPS. Her ability to dish out high amounts of AoE damage in a really short time, coupled with her flexibility and ability to support other teammates with strong buffs, makes her a unit that certainly won't disappoint you. Try not to be discouraged early on by a unique playstyle. I promise you will get used to it much faster than you would initially anticipate. But yeah, that should be all from me for now. If you feel like you learned something, consider leaving a like, or hey, maybe even a sub. I will make a ton more Wuthering Waves content in the future, so make sure to get notified. I hope to see you in the next one.